The massive alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a silver needle against the black fabric of space. Inside, Ambassador Gray stood before the ship's main viewing screen, his tall, slender frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. His large, dark eyes blinked slowly as he studied the blue planet below. "Such a primitive world," he muttered, scrolling through the initial scan reports on his tablet. "They haven't even colonized their own moon yet." The ship's captain, a veteran of countless first contacts, moved to stand beside him. "Don't let their technology level fool you, Ambassador. Every species has its surprises." Gray dismissed the warning with a wave of his four-fingered hand. "Please, Captain. I've overseen the integration of 12 different species into the Federation. These humans are still using combustion engines and silicon-based computers." He zoomed in on a city, watching the vehicles crawl along the highways. "They're centuries behind us." The Federation's protocol for first contact was simple: observe for 3 days, then approach the planet's leaders. Gray's team followed this to the letter, scanning every major city, monitoring communications, and analyzing human behavior patterns. On the 3rd day, they picked up something interesting. "Ambassador, you need to see this," called out one of the cultural analysts. "We're detecting large gatherings in multiple locations. The humans appear to be watching moving images for entertainment." Gray glided over to the analyst's station. The screen showed various scenes from movie theaters around the world. In New York, people watched superheroes turn everyday objects into tools of combat. In Tokyo, a movie showed students defending their school with improvised weapons. In London, viewers cheered as an action hero defeated armed criminals using only items found in a kitchen. "How primitive," Gray chuckled. "They create fantasies about fighting with household items because they lack proper weapons." He made a note in his report about humanity's charming but unrealistic entertainment. The next morning, Gray prepared for humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. The Federation ship descended through the clouds above the United Nations building in New York, its stealth field disabled to allow humans to witness their arrival. The landing caused exactly the chaos Gray expected. Crowds gathered, military vehicles surrounded the area, and news helicopters circled overhead. What he didn't expect was the speed and efficiency with which the humans organized themselves. Within an hour, a welcome committee had assembled. Gray walked down the ship's ramp, flanked by his security team. He had chosen to appear in his natural form, believing that his impressive height and ethereal appearance would properly humble the humans. The humans, however, didn't seem particularly humbled. Tom Baker, a former military instructor turned diplomatic advisor, stood among the welcoming committee. While others gaped at the aliens, he carefully observed their movements, their gear, and most importantly, their assumptions. He noticed how they dismissed the police officers' simple batons, how they barely glanced at the maintenance workers and their tools, how they seemed amused by the primitive Earth weapons carried by the security teams. "Welcome to Earth," the UN Secretary-General stepped forward, extending a hand in greeting. "We are honored to make first contact with your civilization." Gray stared at the offered hand for a moment before remembering his cultural briefing. He extended his own hand, completing the primitive greeting ritual. "The Galactic Federation is pleased to make your acquaintance. We have been observing your world and believe you are ready for guidance." Tom caught the slight pause, the hint of condescension in the alien's voice. As Gray began his prepared speech about uplifting humanity and sharing advanced technology, Tom's mind was already working. He watched a janitor mop the floor nearby, mentally counting the ways that simple mop could be used as a weapon if needed. Not that he expected trouble, but as his old drill sergeant used to say, "Everything's a weapon if you know how to use it." The age of humanity's innocence was about to end. The age of humanity's ingenuity was about to begin. 3 weeks after first contact, Ambassador Gray sat in his temporary office at the United Nations, watching human movies on multiple screens. His research team had insisted on studying human entertainment to better understand their new hosts. What he saw both confused and amused him. They seem obsessed with the idea of fighting against superior forces, he said to his assistant, pointing at a screen showing Die Hard. Look at this one. A single human defeating multiple enemies with cleaning supplies and office equipment. Complete fantasy. On another screen, Home Alone played, showing elaborate traps made from household items. And this. They teach their young to think this way too. Gray shook his head, making notes about humanity's childish imagination. Meanwhile, across the city, Tom Baker was conducting a very different kind of observation. The former military instructor had been assigned as the alien delegation's Earth guide, a position that gave him plenty of opportunities to study their technology and behavior. Their biggest weakness is their pride, Tom told General Peters during their weekly meeting. They sat in a small diner, deliberately chosen for its ordinary appearance. They think we're babies playing with toys. You should see how they laugh at our movies. The general stirred his coffee thoughtfully. And what exactly do you see in those same movies, Tom? Training videos, Tom replied, dead serious. Every action movie is basically a creative problem-solving exercise. Take this diner. I count 14 items within arm's reach that could be used as weapons. The aliens, they only see plates and cutlery. Back at the UN, Gray's team continued their study of human behavior. They visited schools, factories, and shopping centers, always with the same condescending curiosity. At a high school, they watched a chemistry class with particular interest. Such basic understanding of elements, one alien scientist remarked, watching students mix simple compounds. They're still teaching about chemical reactions that we mastered centuries ago. The chemistry teacher, Mrs. White, smiled politely but shared a knowing look with her students. The aliens had completely missed the point of her lesson about how everyday chemicals could react under different conditions. As the observation period continued, patterns emerged. The aliens were fascinated by human military bases and weapons factories, but paid little attention to hardware stores or cleaning supply warehouses. They studied police tactical units but ignored martial arts dojos, where people learned to fight with whatever was at hand. Tom noticed everything. He started organizing informal cultural exchange sessions, inviting aliens to watch action movies with groups of veterans and martial artists. The aliens thought they were studying human culture. In reality, Tom was studying their reactions, noting what they dismissed as impossible or ridiculous. One evening, as Gray reviewed the day's observations, an alert caught his attention. His security team had detected a high number of human combat training facilities operating at unusual hours. The report dismissed it as normal human behavior, but something about the pattern bothered him. Why do they continue practicing with primitive weapons when we've offered them advanced technology? He wondered aloud. The answer came from an unexpected source. During a diplomatic dinner, Gray watched in surprise as a human child turned a paper napkin into a surprisingly accurate projectile launcher, using just rubber bands and a plastic fork. How did you learn to do that? Gray asked the boy. YouTube, the child shrugged, already working on another creation. Mom says I'm not allowed to make them at school anymore. Gray added another note to his report about humans teaching combat techniques through their global information network, completely missing the significance of what he'd seen. That night, Tom received a coded message from General Peters. Assessment confirmed. They don't understand us at all. Keep them thinking that way. Tom smiled as he deleted the message. The aliens thought they were observing humanity, but humanity had been observing right back. And while the aliens saw only a primitive species playing with toys, humans saw potential weapons everywhere they looked. The question wasn't if this difference in perspective would matter, but when. The emergency alert woke Ambassador Gray at 3 a.m. Earth time. His silver skin paled to white as he read the encrypted message from the Federation fleet. The Ravagers, a hostile species known for attacking developing worlds, had been detected approaching the solar system. Impossible, Gray whispered, his long fingers trembling as he activated the emergency communication channel. They wouldn't dare attack a Federation-protected world. But the evidence was clear on his screen. 3 massive Ravager warships moving fast toward Earth. The Federation's nearest battle fleet was 2 weeks away, scattered across too many systems to respond quickly. In his private quarters at the UN building, Tom Baker was already awake when his phone rang. He listened quietly as General Peters explained the situation. "The aliens just called an emergency meeting," the general said. "How bad do you think it is?" "Bad enough that they're scared," Tom replied, watching dawn break over New York. "But maybe not as bad as they think." He paused, considering. "Remember that warehouse inventory I asked for last week? The one with all the cleaning supplies and industrial chemicals?" "Yeah. Tell them to start moving everything exactly where we discussed, and get me a list of every hardware store in a 50-mile radius." At the emergency UN session 2 hours later, Gray stood before the world's leaders. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by genuine concern. "The Ravagers are—" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "They are what you might call space pirates, but far more dangerous. They attack developing worlds, steal resources, and—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "How long do we have?" someone asked. 5 days at most. Our nearest fleet cannot arrive in time." Gray's large eyes scanned the room. "We can provide some defensive technology, but it won't be enough. The Ravagers have never failed to conquer a world at your development level." Tom, sitting quietly in the back of the room, raised his hand. "Tell us about their weapons and defenses." Gray displayed a hologram of a Ravager ship. "They use energy shields that can stop any projectile or energy weapon. Their armor is virtually impenetrable. Their soldiers wear personal force fields that—" "What about their environmental suits?" Tom interrupted. "Do they breathe our air?" "No," Gray replied, confused by the question. "They require special atmosphere converters, but that hardly matters given their defensive capabilities." Tom shared a look with General Peters. Both men were thinking the same thing. Every defense had a weakness. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't the most advanced. It was the one nobody expected. As the meeting continued, messages flew across the globe. Hardware stores reported sudden bulk orders. Chemical plants redirected their shipments. And in thousands of locations, people began reviewing those unrealistic action movies with new purpose. Gray noticed none of this. He was too busy trying to figure out how to defend a primitive world with insufficient resources. He watched in confusion as human leaders seemed more interested in requesting basic industrial supplies than advanced weapons. "I don't understand," he confided to his assistant. "We offer them shield generators and laser cannons, but they ask for shipments of cleaning products and construction materials. Have they given up?" In a secure room beneath the Pentagon, Tom sat with a group of scientists, engineers, and what the aliens would call primitive weapon makers. On the table before them lay an array of everyday items: drain cleaners, fertilizers, pressure cookers, and things the aliens had dismissed as simple tools. "They think they're invincible because they've planned for every conventional weapon," Tom told the group. "But they've never faced humans before, and we've spent our entire history turning ordinary things into weapons." He picked up a can of common household cleaner. "Their suits protect them from our atmosphere, right? Well, let's give them something their suits aren't designed to handle." As the Ravager ships drew closer, Earth prepared for war. Not in the way the Federation expected, with high-tech weapons and energy shields, but in a uniquely human way. The aliens were about to learn why humans made all those unrealistic action movies. Because sometimes they weren't just movies. They were instruction manuals. 4 days before the expected Ravager arrival, Earth's major cities looked strangely normal from above. Ambassador Gray watched from his office window as New York continued its daily routine. No mass panic, no military parades, no obvious signs of preparation for the coming invasion. It worried him deeply. "They're not taking this seriously enough," he told the Federation Council during his daily report. "They barely ask for any of our defensive technology. Either they've given up, or he couldn't think of another explanation. But beneath the surface, humanity was far from idle. In an abandoned subway station beneath Manhattan, Tom Baker stood before an unusual gathering. The crowd included chemists, builders, mechanics, and even a group of special effects artists from Hollywood. "The aliens think we're doing nothing," Tom said, pointing to a map covered in red dots. "That's exactly what we want them to think. Each red dot is a preparation site. We have thousands across the globe." He picked up a common spray bottle filled with blue liquid. "This looks harmless, right? But the chemicals inside will eat through their environmental suits like acid through paper. And this," he held up what looked like a modified pressure washer, "this turns regular cleaning supplies into a foam that jams their weapon systems." Across the city, ordinary locations were being transformed. Hardware stores became weapons factories. Swimming pools were filled with chemical mixtures designed to disable alien technology. Beauty salons stockpiled hairspray and aerosol cans, not for hair, but for improvised flamethrowers. In his own office, General Peters met with Mrs. White, the chemistry teacher who had caught Tom's attention earlier. "Your students' ideas are creative," he said, reviewing a list of chemical combinations. "Are you sure these will work?" Mrs. White smiled. "The aliens think we're teaching basic chemistry. What we're really teaching is how to weaponize everyday materials. Trust me, General. Those movie scenes they laugh at, we can make them real." Ambassador Gray grew more concerned as the days passed. His scans showed minimal military movement, but something felt off. Humans were still shopping, still going to work, still seeming too calm. During a meeting with Earth's Defense Council, he tried again to offer advanced weapons. "Your conventional arms will be useless," he insisted. "Their shields block all known projectiles and energy weapons." "Thank you, Ambassador," General Peters replied politely. "But we have our own methods of defense." That evening, Tom coordinated with resistance groups worldwide via secure channels. The plans were simple but effective. Every city had its own stockpile of converted everyday items. Every neighborhood had its designated response team. Every household had its list of useful materials. In a school gymnasium turned command center, Tom watched workers modify ordinary leaf blowers to spray chemical combinations. Others turned simple pressure cookers into devices that could disable alien electronics. A group of kids demonstrated how rubber bands and paper clips could be used to create surprisingly effective slingshots. "The aliens think these are toys," one kid said proudly, showing how his creation could launch small chemical packets with remarkable accuracy. A day before the expected invasion, Ambassador Gray made one final attempt to understand Earth's strategy. "Please," he begged Tom during their last meeting, "tell me what defensive measures you're taking. I see no evidence of serious preparation." Tom looked at the alien with a mix of pity and amusement. "Ambassador, do you know why humans make so many movies about beating superior forces with everyday items?" Gray shook his head. "Because we've been doing it our entire history. Every tool is a weapon. Every chemical is ammunition. Every household item has deadly potential, if you know how to use it." As Gray left the meeting confused and worried, Tom received a simple message from General Peters. "All sites report ready. Let them come." Humanity wasn't just prepared for war. They were prepared for a kind of war the Ravagers had never imagined. One fought not with advanced technology, but with the weaponized ingenuity of an entire species that had spent its history turning ordinary things into extraordinary weapons. The invasion was about to begin, and Earth was ready. The Ravager ships appeared at dawn, 3 massive black vessels that blocked out the sun over New York City. Their arrival was exactly what Ambassador Gray had feared: swift, intimidating, and seemingly unstoppable. "Surrender now," the Ravager commander's voice boomed across emergency channels. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your Federation friends cannot save you." From his emergency bunker, Tom Baker watched the first wave of Ravager dropships descend. Each one carried 50 soldiers in advanced battle armor. Their shields sparkled in the morning light, deflecting the few military missiles Earth's armies fired for show. "Let them land," Tom spoke into his radio. "Remember the plan. Let them think they've won." The first Ravager troops landed in Times Square, their massive forms towering over the empty streets. Each soldier stood 8 feet tall, protected by personal shields, and breathing through complex atmospheric converters. They moved forward confidently, expecting little resistance from such a primitive world. Then it began. From the windows above, hundreds of modified pressure washers sprayed their special chemical foam. The Ravagers laughed at first, until their shields began to sputter and die. "Impossible," a Ravager commander shouted. "Their technology is too primitive for shield disruption." But it wasn't technology disrupting their shields. It was simple chemistry, combinations of cleaning products that reacted with their shield generators in ways their advanced sensors never thought to guard against. In Central Park, another group of Ravagers faced an even stranger attack. Modified leaf blowers launched clouds of what seemed like ordinary powder, baby powder mixed with common fertilizer. The powder found its way into their suit joints and atmospheric converters. Within minutes, entire squads were struggling to breathe. "Their weapons," a Ravager soldier screamed. "They're using cleaning supplies." Across the city, humanity's preparations unleashed hell. Hardware store workers turned nail guns into armor-piercing weapons. Hairdressers used modified aerosol cans as flamethrowers. Chemistry students launched balloons filled with compounds that turned the aliens' advanced sensors useless. Ambassador Gray watched in shock from his office as the Ravagers' perfect invasion fell apart. But they're not using any advanced weapons," he sputtered. "No," Tom replied, standing beside him. "We're using something better. We're using everything." In the streets below, the Ravagers faced a new kind of warfare. Every doorway held a trap. Every alley concealed a surprise. A group of aliens broke into a home improvement store, expecting to find cowering humans. Instead, they found an army of workers armed with paint sprayers filled with corrosive mixtures. The Ravager commander, watching his forces fall into chaos, ordered his troops to retreat to their ships. But even there, they found no safety. The city's water supply had been carefully treated with chemicals that, while harmless to humans, played havoc with their ship's external sensors. "How?" the commander demanded over their communications. "How can they fight us with such primitive tools?" The answer came in the form of a citywide broadcast, Tom's voice calm and clear. "Because everything is a weapon to us. Your shields stop bullets. We don't need bullets. Your armor blocks energy weapons. We never planned to use them. You prepared for a technological war. We gave you a human war." By sunset, the mighty Ravager invasion force was in full retreat. Their shields were useless against simple chemical attacks. Their advanced sensors were blinded by household products. Their mighty armor was defeated by tools from the local hardware store. As the alien ships flooded Earth's atmosphere, Ambassador Gray turned to Tom with new respect in his eyes. "All those movies," he said quietly. "They weren't entertainment, were they?" Tom smiled. "Oh, they were entertainment, but they were also inspiration. Humans don't just adapt to use weapons, Ambassador. We adapt everything to be a weapon." Above them, the stars began to appear as the dust settled over the city. Earth had won its first interstellar war not with advanced technology, but with the weapon the aliens never saw coming: human creativity. And somewhere in space, the retreating Ravagers learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate a species that can turn cleaning supplies into weapons of war. 3 days after the failed Ravager invasion, Ambassador Gray stood before the Federation Council's emergency session. The massive holographic chamber was filled with representatives from 100 alien species, all eager to understand how a primitive world had defeated one of the galaxy's most feared forces. "Show us again," demanded the council leader, their multiple eyes fixed on the battle footage. "Show us how they turned cleaning supplies into weapons." Gray played the recordings. The council watched in stunned silence as humans transformed ordinary objects into tools of war. A janitor's mop became a launcher for chemical packages. A farmer's fertilizer combined with simple household items created explosions that disabled Ravager shields. Children's toys became delivery systems for suit-corroding compounds. "This breaks every military doctrine we know," one council member said. "Their level of technology suggests they should have been defenseless." In the back of the chamber, Tom Baker stood quietly with General Peters, both invited as Earth's representatives. They exchanged knowing looks as the aliens struggled to understand what they had witnessed. "Perhaps," Tom finally spoke up, "you're measuring advancement the wrong way." The chamber fell silent as he walked to the center of the floor. Tom picked up a simple pen from the podium. "To you, this is just a writing tool. To us, it's potentially a weapon." He held up his phone. "This isn't just for communication. It's a tool for coordinating defense." He pulled out his handkerchief. "This isn't just for cleaning. It's a filter, a fuse, a bandage, or a signal flag. Everything serves multiple purposes." Ambassador Gray stepped forward. "During our observation period, we thought we were studying a species that loved to imagine impossible scenarios in their entertainment. Now I understand. They weren't imagining. They were practicing." On the main screen, new footage played. Store owners turning their shops into fortresses, teachers using their knowledge of chemistry to create defensive weapons, mechanics converting everyday tools into devices that could disable alien technology. "Their true weapon isn't their technology," Gray continued. "It's their mindset. They see potential weapons everywhere because they've spent their entire history adapting to use whatever they have available." The council leader leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we've been wrong about what makes a species advanced?" "Yes," Gray replied firmly. "We measure advancement by technological achievement. Humans measure it by adaptability. While we perfect our energy weapons, they practice turning kitchen supplies into artillery. While we enhance our shields, they find ways to defeat them with simple chemistry." In the following hours, the council reviewed more footage. Humans using modified paint sprayers to deliver chemicals that jammed Ravager targeting systems. Construction workers turning their tools into anti-armor weapons. Even children contributing by showing soldiers how to make simple but effective slingshots for delivering chemical packets. "This changes everything," the council leader finally announced. "Our entire classification system for developing worlds needs to be reconsidered. A species that can turn household items into weapons capable of defeating advanced technology. This is a form of advancement we never considered." Tom stepped forward again. "There's something else you should know. What you saw, that was just a fraction of what we can do. We held back most of our ideas, just in case." The chamber erupted in murmurs. The idea that humans had more creative weapons in reserve was both fascinating and frightening to the Federation members. Ambassador Gray approached Tom after the session. "I understand now why you humans were so calm before the invasion. You never needed our advanced weapons." Tom smiled. "Don't get me wrong, Ambassador. We appreciate advanced technology. But humans learned long ago that it's not the weapon that matters most. It's how creatively you use what you have." As they walked out of the chamber, Gray had one final question. "Those action movies we dismissed as unrealistic, were they actually training videos all along?" "No," Tom laughed. "They're entertainment, but they remind us of something important. Anything can be a weapon if you're creative enough. That's not just human fiction. It's human history." The Federation would never look at primitive worlds the same way again. They had learned an important lesson. True advancement isn't just about creating new weapons. It's about seeing the potential weapons in everything around you. And nobody did that better than humans. 1 month after the Ravager invasion, Earth had changed. Not in the way most alien invasions changed planets. There were no ruined cities or advanced technology scattered across the landscape. Instead, the change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Ambassador Gray stood in a completely ordinary Earth classroom, watching a 10-year-old girl turn a rubber band, a pencil, and a paperclip into a surprisingly accurate miniature catapult. "And what else could you use this for?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, lots of things," the girl replied casually. "It could launch small packages, send messages over walls, or," she grinned, "shoot spitballs during math class. But we're not supposed to do that." Gray had learned more about human nature in this classroom than in all his previous diplomatic missions combined. Nearby, a science teacher demonstrated how simple household chemicals could create reactions that mimicked advanced alien technology. "This is why we're here today," Tom Baker explained to the group of Federation observers. "You wanted to know how we think. Well, this is where it starts. In classrooms, garages, and backyards across the world. We teach our children to see possibilities everywhere." The Federation had sent representatives from 50 different worlds to study Earth's alternative advancement path. They watched in amazement as humans demonstrated their unique approach to problem solving. In a nearby workshop, a mechanic showed how he had turned his tools into anti-armor weapons during the invasion. "Anything can be a weapon," he explained, holding up a simple wrench. "But more importantly, anything can be a tool. It's all about how you look at it." Ambassador Gray's report to the Federation Council had sparked a revolution in how advanced civilizations view technology. "The humans have taught us that true advancement isn't just about creating new things," he wrote. "It's about understanding everything around you has multiple uses." In response, the Federation created a new classification for Earth, Creatively Advanced Species. It was the first time they had created a new category in 10,000 years. Tom visited the alien embassy, now expanded to include a human innovation center. Inside, Federation scientists studied everything from action movies to cooking shows, finally understanding that humans hadn't been creating mere entertainment. They had been sharing knowledge about adaptation and improvisation across their entire culture. "We've been invited to join the Federation's Defense Council," General Peters told Tom during their weekly meeting at their favorite diner. "Not because of our technology, but because of how we think." Tom nodded, absently turning his coffee stirrer into a tiny defensive tool. It was such a human thing to do that several alien observers nearby immediately started taking notes. "The Ravagers have officially declared Earth a no-approach zone," the general continued. "Apparently, they're terrified of what we might do with actual advanced technology if we can beat them with cleaning supplies." The greatest change, however, was in how other species interacted with humans. Once dismissed as primitives, humans were now sought out as teachers. Federation worlds wanted to learn this unique way of looking at everyday objects and situations. In the final meeting of Earth's first year as a Federation member, Ambassador Gray made a surprising announcement. "The Federation has traditionally offered advanced weapons to developing worlds," he said, "but Earth has shown us a better way. From now on, we will teach worlds to use what they have before we give them what we have." Tom watched from his seat as the announcement was broadcast across the galaxy. On the table before him lay a piece of paper, a paperclip, and a rubber band. Without even thinking about it, his hands began to work, turning these simple items into something else. A young alien diplomat watched him work. "Is that going to be a weapon?" she asked nervously. "Could be," Tom replied with a smile. "Could also be a toy, a tool, or a teaching aid. That's the point we've been trying to make. Everything has potential. You just have to be willing to see it." As humanity stepped into its new role in the galaxy, they carried with them their most powerful weapon, the ability to see beyond the obvious, to find extraordinary uses for ordinary things. And somewhere, in every human classroom, garage, and workshop, people continued to look at everyday objects and ask themselves the question that had helped them defeat an alien invasion. What else could this become?